The global version of the ZTE Axon 30 Ultra is finally up for pre-order today, which in turn marks today as the day I get to share my full review with you all. In this extremely detailed review, I'll be going in depth in terms of design, display, cameras, software, features, speakers, 144 FPS gaming, and finally benchmarks. I will also be comparing the device to its direct competitors, and if its flagship predecessor, the Axon 10 Pro, is anything to go by, it shouldn't have any problem keeping up with some of the best ultra flagship smartphones around. Of course, I have done this initial unboxing before. I thought I'd show some newcomers it again. We get a case in the box. It is a hard shell transparent case, as well as an earphone adapter and some earphones as well. We also get a Type-C to Type-C 6 ampere cable to power through that 65 watt charging coming through its brick, which is indeed included in the box. The phone is there, of course, as well, which is what we're going to go ahead and unwrap right now. I have the black color variant of the device. It is known as anti-glare glass. This color that is. There are other colors available in China. I'm not quite sure if they're going to be releasing more colors in global regions, but we do have Gorilla Glass 5 on the front and back with an aluminum frame, which is nice and slim as well. And that anti-glass back is definitely a anti-fingerprint smudger, but we do have that hard shell case in the box if you'd like to use it on day one. I think it actually looks superb and can be used in the long run too. The back looks fantastic, and inside of that we have a 4600 mAh battery, 65 watt flash wide charging, and we have 5G, NFC, Wi-Fi 6E, and of course Bluetooth 5.2. On the right side of the device we have a textured power button, a volume rocker. At the top we have a microphone. At the bottom we have the other microphone, a dual SIM tray with no support for expandable storage, USB 3.1 Type-C ports, and the first speaker of two. It is indeed DTS-X Ultra driven. The second speaker is found within the earpiece, which is above the 2.6mm punch hole selfie camera. The camera bump at the back is pretty hefty, bigger than many others around, but slightly smaller than other ultra smartphones around. We'll get to the actual optics a little bit later, but as for now, the surface wobble is not the best because of that massive camera module at the back. I must say it looks pretty nifty, pretty much in line with other 2021 flagships. It looks fantastic if you ask me. I really like that matte black finish, and it is lighter and thinner than all the other flagship devices around. The back looks fantastic, like I've mentioned so many times, but what about the front? Well, we are welcome to a 20:9 aspect ratio, 6.67 inch flexible curved display. It is Full HD Plus with a PPI of 395. It is of course AMOLED with 1 billion colors and a max peak brightness of 800 nits. And we do have 144 Hz refresh rate and 300 Hz touch sampling rate. The color accuracy is on par with all other flagships around, and some of them aren't even matching the 1 billion colors that we see on the Axon 30 Ultra. The curves aren't quite as subtle as other smartphones, but slightly more subtle than other smartphones. I guess it's pretty much in between the rest of them, and the white color balance is on par with other flagships around, sometimes a little bit better. Some may say slightly more yellowish than others. I still think it looks pretty much on point. Like I said, nice, bright and vivid compared to the rest of them, not the brightest around. It does have a pretty tiny hole punch at the top, one of the smallest around, and it is in the center like the S21 Ultra and not on the side, which is something that I prefer. It is slightly boxier than other phones, and unfortunately no WQHD Plus like we see on other phones around here, but we do have 144 Hz over here, which is honestly only seen in gaming phones. I'm pretty sure this is the only non-gaming centric device that actually houses 144 Hz. Most phones in this lineup, or in this flagship category, only house 120 Hz panel with 240 Hz touch sampling rate. This has 144 Hz with 300 Hz touch sampling rate. And yes, it can use auto refresh rate, though it does not automatically adjust from like 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 like many other phones around, but it can jump between 60 all the way up to 144, and you can lock it as well to anyone that you'd prefer. We have nightlight over here, different color modes. We can also change the reading mode to only specific apps, and we have a screen touch prevention mode, which allows you to decide how much touch prevention there are on the edges of the phone, which is something that I think we should see in all other phones. Dark mode is there. It's pretty gray though, not too black, and it does affect the wallpaper on the home screen as well as everything else about the phone, but it doesn't support third-party apps. We also have a bunch of different styles when it comes to always on display, though there aren't really many customization options over here. You can tweak with the basic ones, but the really cool ones you can't really adjust that much, though I still think they look superb, especially this spiraling one over here. And of course, we have an under-display fingerprint sensor. Unlike many other phones that have slowly been shifting back to physical ones, I still prefer the in-display fingerprint sensor take on it. And you can use it for shortcuts, and there are a bunch of different animations. It's pretty much on par, if not a tad slower than other smartphones around. I know that Xiaomi and Oppo and OnePlus are all known for snappy fingerprints, and it's pretty much on par with the one seen within the S21 Ultra, which is ultrasonic. This one is optical. We do have 2D face unlock here. It's not as secure as the fingerprint sensor, and there's no 3D face unlock. Not many Androids have this, pretty much only Huawei, and it does a pretty decent job. Once again, not the quickest around, but it is very snappy, and when you're not comparing it, you're not going to notice the difference in speed. It is still very, very snappy, but it can be used for something else, and that is taking pictures. It is 16 megapixels, and the pictures come out nice and crisp and clear, though when in portrait mode, there is quite a lot of edge detection. Hopefully this gets fixed with future software updates. What's up guys, this is TechNeck recording a 1080p at 30 FPS video using the brand new ZTE Axon 30 Ultra. I'm currently using the global variant of the phone. Let me know what you guys think of the audio and video quality. And taking video at night, 1080p 30 FPS, like I said before, is the cap. Doesn't look the best in evening conditions, but not many people actually take video when using the selfie cam at night. When it comes to pictures, there is a night mode for photos, so it doesn't look the best in terms of selfies. At the back, we have a main ultra wide and telephoto sensor, all with 64 megapixel counts. We also have laser autofocus across the board, as well as optical image stabilization. And we have a fourth camera here, that being a periscope, which is indeed 8 megapixels and can go all the way up to 5 times optical and 60 times hybrid zoom. The ultra wide sensor takes some pretty decent snaps, and you can bin it down to 16 megapixel using 4:1 binning to get a super pixel. You can do the same with the main camera. Once again, looks slightly better once binned down thanks to AI. 64 megapixel telephoto. This is the portrait camera over here, which does 2 times optical zoom. Periscope does not get binned down. It does 5 times optical zoom. It can also do 10 times hybrid zoom, 30 times hybrid zoom, and the max is 60 times, though it doesn't look as good as I've seen on other smartphones around. We are back to the main sensor over here, 16 megapixel binned. Everything will be binned from here on out, and then zooming in to the 5 times optical zoom looks great. 10 times hybrid doesn't look too bad now that this is a slightly better day. 30 times hybrid slightly better than the pictures we took earlier, though 60 times hybrid, I guess it's kind of going on the edge a bit over there. It should have been capped at a 30. Taking pictures of myself, well, my wife actually had the phone in her hand. Looks pretty great in terms of portrait shots. You can take some portrait shots blurring the foreground and background, keeping the middle ground focused, as well as focusing on the foreground over there. Does a pretty great job. And macro mode is here. Strange thing, it actually drops to 5 megapixels, and I did test it out with my finger at the back to see which lens it's using. It is using the main camera instead of the ultra wide. Very strange. Comparing the main sensor to the S21 Ultra in some snaps over here, I actually think the color reproduction is more natural in the Axon 30 Ultra over here, but sometimes there's slightly more detail on the S21 Ultra. But you got to remember that the S21 Ultra does cost a hell of a lot more money. But when we do go from ultra wide, which doesn't look as good on the Axon, to main, which is a little bit more dull but packs a little bit more detail, to 5 times and 10 times zoom on both, I actually think there's slightly more detail on the Axon, but it is slightly more dim compared to the S21 Ultra. When it comes to video recording, it is slightly more stable on the S21 Ultra, but they both look absolutely fantastic, recording 4K at 60 frames per second. No complaints here with the Axon 30 Ultra, and we can go all the way up to 8K here at 30 frames per second, which is the max resolution and frame rate when recording at 8K. It's a little bit more shaky, but a lot less shaky than other smartphones I've tested at 8K. 4K 60 FPS is a lot more fluid. We're using optical image stabilization over here. With the main camera, it's nice and smooth, not 30 anymore over here. Sticking to 60 FPS with 1080p. Once again, nice and smooth, moving the camera very fast, motion paced over here. It picks up a lot of detail and doesn't tend to give off too much motion blur. 4K 60 FPS can be used within the ultra wide lens as well, using electronic image stabilization instead of optical image stabilization. It still does an absolutely great job, not quite as good as the main camera, though it's very nice and stable thanks to the ultra wide feature, very similar to what you would see from a GoPro over here. So the stabilization is even better. And talking about stabilization, when we turn the stabilizer off within the settings menu, you can see how janky it truly is. And going into 4K 60 FPS, keeping the resolution and the FPS the exact same with the stabilizer on, it is a hell of a lot smoother. And when you go into the ultra wide with the stabilizer on as well, it's even smoother than that. So I must say they've done a pretty great job in terms of stability over here. 3 different sound profiles that you can actually use when recording video. We have front recording, which is this, rear recording,
using only sound coming from the back of the phone, and then surround recording, which is now this, which gets the front and the back. Let me know if you guys can actually hear a difference. I record using 3 different cameras at the same time. So right now I'm using the telephoto camera to do 5x zoom, and I'm also using the regular camera to do just regular 1x zoom, and also the selfie cam, which is actually pretty nifty. You can only do 3 at a time, but you can choose any camera of your choosing. You can also do the same with photos, and with a photo you can actually take a picture using the ultra wide, and it lands up taking a picture of all the cameras at the same time, and then you can choose which one you prefer later on, which is, once again, pretty epic.
We can also record 8K at night, though it tends to bring down the frame rate quite a lot to 11 FPS. It's a lot more shaky. 4K gets dropped to 58 FPS for some reason. It's not as shaky, but it's a hell of a lot dimmer compared to 8K. Same thing with 1080p over here, though. If you drop it to 30 FPS, things will look a lot brighter, though it will be a little more shaky. When it comes to taking pics at night with the ultra wide night mode off and night mode on is a lot brighter, but it loses a lot of detail. With the main camera sensor, it actually retains the detail and brightens up the shot a lot when enabling night mode, and using the portrait telephoto lens over here once again brings more detail and brightens things up even more. So I guess you could kind of say, as with most phones, ultra wide doesn't look the best with night mode on, though in this scenario it kind of does, but with the main and the zoomed in shots it looks even better than the regular snaps, thanks to AI using night mode and the wonderful binned down 16 megapixel pics. Of course, we also have MyOS 11 based on Android 11, and apparently this software will evolve over time. I can, in my opinion, can expect Android 12 to come around mid-year next year, due to the fact that the Axon 10 Pro only got its Android 10 update from Android 9 roughly 6 months after the Android 10 release. So I guess you could kind of expect a 6-month delay, but that's pretty much normal for phones that are releasing around this time, even for phones coming from Samsung. We have a lot of different features over here. Once again, we have some sensitivity for edges over here when pulling on the sides for the gestures. We also have pocket mode, touch disable mode for when your phone is accidentally getting activated in your pocket. And we also have shake to turn on your flashlight, though 3rd time lucky over here. I guess this could get improved. I'm not quite sure why it's still an option. We also have well-being to see how much we've unlocked our phone, and we can also keep track of the hardware. And of course, we have all Google services, and haptics are fantastic, though not my preferred style, since each rumble kind of rolls into the next. Screen locking sounds are pretty awesome. What's even better is the included hi-fi DAC when pairing in a pair of earphones. And of course, we have DTS:X Ultra speakers, which we're going to compare to the S21 Ultra's Dolby Atmos and the Mi 11 Ultra's Harman-Kardon. Before diving into some gaming, it is worth mentioning that there is a triple cooling system within this non-centric gaming device, and we're going to kickstart things off here in the gaming front with Genshin Impact with the highest possible graphics and the maximum frames per second. The cap of this game is 60 FPS, even though the phone can reach 144 FPS. This is because of the game, not the phone, and hitting a rock solid 60 in Genshin Impact, if you ask anyone that knows the game, is impressive to say the least, especially on a non-centric gaming powered smartphone. PUBG Mobile can go all the way up to 90 FPS on low settings, low graphics settings that is, on some phones, though it's not supported yet with the Axon. I'm pretty sure it will get support in the near future, though we're sitting at a solid 60 FPS with max graphics and FPS once again. Max graphics and FPS once again with Call of Duty Mobile over here. Once again, it can jump up to 90 FPS on medium graphics, though the option's not available yet for the Axon. It was still sitting a rock solid 60. When it comes to bullet force, it has an unlimited FPS, and yes, it is supported by the Axon 30 Ultra. We should be seeing 144, though we're sitting at around 125 FPS since it is a pretty graphics intense game. Same thing can be said with Dead Trigger 2 on ultra graphics and max FPS sitting at around 100 frames per second, which isn't too shabby if you ask me. Even here with Real Racing 3 sitting at 120, 130 FPS. But what about benchmarks? Well, we do of course have a Snapdragon 888 chipset inside. We have LPDDR5 RAM. I have the 8GB version over here, and we also have UFS 3.1 storage and that wonderfully big 4600 mAh battery. We're currently powering through AnTuTu version 9, Geekbench version 5, and 3D Mark Wildlife version 2.2, which just focuses on graphics. I did test out the battery percentage at the start, and now we're going to compare it at the end to get the milliamp per minute reading, which is sitting at 33.7, which is not necessarily the best. I also recorded the temps at the start, which jumped up by 29.2 degrees in Celsius, bringing it all the way up to 56.7. When it comes to AnTuTu version 9, it sits right in the middle of the pack over here, which is pretty impressive considering how much cheaper this device is compared to these other smartphones. But when it comes to Geekbench version 5, it sits right at the bottom with the weakest single core, but not necessarily the worst multi-core, which is pretty much on par with the rest of the devices. And when it comes to the graphics heavy 3D Mark Wildlife run, we once again slap bang in the middle here with 34 frames per second. The ZTE Axon 30 Ultra is a stunner from all angles. It's nice and slim and is very lightweight, with most of its weight being found within the camera module, which not only looks professional but packs a punch with a trio of 64 megapixel cameras and a periscope lens to boot. The curved display may not be the brightest around and may lack a QHD resolution, but it is one of the only non-gaming smartphones to pack in a 144Hz refresh rate paired with 300Hz touch sampling rate, making its simplistic yet feature-packed software a breeze to use. Not to mention it games like an absolute monster thanks to Qualcomm's flagship leading Snapdragon 888 chipset, even though it can heat up a bit at times. All that said, the Axon 30 Ultra does have some steep competition. The OnePlus 9 Pro and Oppo Find X3 Pro are identical on paper, and both sport QHD displays, wireless charging, and an IP68 water and dust certification. But neither of them beat the Axon 30 Ultra in terms of camera performance. They lack the Axon 30's 144Hz display, and while the OnePlus 9 Pro might not cost as much as the Find X3 Pro, they both cost quite a bit more than ZTE's finest. Then there's the other two Ultra smartphones, the Samsung Galaxy S21 Ultra and Xiaomi Mi 11 Ultra, which once again outdo the Axon 30 Ultra in terms of high resolution displays, wireless charging, and water resistance. Unlike the OnePlus and Oppo, the S21 Ultra and Mi 11 Ultra do take slightly, and I mean slightly, better pics and vids compared to the Axon 30 Ultra, but they both cost a hell of a lot more money, and in my opinion don't justify the price in cameras alone. That begs the question, is the ZTE Axon 30 Ultra worthy of its Ultra name? Well, yes and no. Yes, due to it having a fantastic camera system and top-end flagship specifications, but no due to its lack of mainstream flagship features. With that said, the Axon 30 Ultra cost a lot less than the competition, meaning its Ultra name is more than justified in my books. If you don't have 20/20 vision, don't care much for simply plugging your phone into charge, don't drop your phone in water often, but do care about how much money you spend on a smartphone, then I can highly recommend the ZTE Axon 30 Ultra. After all, it is Ultra in so many more different ways.